Down South Hunting Podcast. This is your host, Mike Higman, and I'm going to be running solo on this one. Adam and I have seen a lot of requests lately for more podcasts, more episodes, and that's something that we're going to try to do for y'all. And with doing that, we've talked about it, and we're just going to have to do some of these on our own. This week, Adam is working at a trade show for his job. It's tough to get a couple full-time salesmen, working guys, along with a guest, and get these out every week. So what we're going to do is split up a little bit more and in an effort to try to get these out a little more. The other thing we're going to have to ask for is a little bit of leniency on any audio quality issues. Sometimes it can take a long time editing these, and it's tough to get them out when you have several hours in front of the computer screen trying to clean some things up. So we're not going to put anything out there that's unbearable to listen to, but there might be some call quality issues or some background noise, something along those lines. And as usual, we might say some really stupid stuff that we might not be able to edit out. So just bear with us on those things, and I think we'll be able to get some more episodes out for you. In this episode, I interviewed Justin Lanclos from Louisiana Bowhunter. I had a great time talking to him. We talked about his hunting in Ohio this year. We talked about hunting across the state of Louisiana. He hunts both private and public land, and how he manages both those types of hunts. And we also talked about a tree stand accident that he had a couple of years ago that was really devastating, and it's something I think that we can all learn from. A couple things before we jump into the interview. Last time we talked, I asked for a bunch of you to subscribe to the podcast so we could try to move up the iTunes or Apple Podcast rankings. And apparently, I don't know a whole lot about how those things work because basically we're still in the same spot. The good news is it doesn't really matter. Our downloads continue to grow, and I know a bunch of you are loyal listeners, and I just want to tell you I really appreciate that. And we're not going to worry about those rankings too much because apparently we can't do a whole lot about them. This last weekend, I was able to get out and go hunting with a couple of my daughters and take a doe, so I had a great time doing that. That wraps up my hunting season for deer this year. Adam's is already wrapped up, but we're always going to have deer hunting on the mind. So in the coming weeks, we're going to be talking habitat improvement. We're going to be talking postseason scouting and some other deer hunting topics. But we're going to also be getting into some other stuff like turkey hunting and maybe some small game and other types of hunting as well. Just some other topics that might be fun to get into. So if you've got any ideas for something else you'd like to hear about, let us know. Justin Lanclos, obviously Louisiana Bowhunter, is from Louisiana, and I promise you we are not turning into the Down South Louisiana podcast. It just so happens the last three guests have been from Louisiana. But if you got somebody from your state that you think we ought to talk to, let us know. A topic that you'd like to hear about, you can contact us on Facebook, and we've got that Facebook group going. It's called Hunting in the South, and that's going real well. We're up to about 1,500 members now, and we're having a real good time doing that. So if you're on Facebook, join us there. You can hit us up on Twitter or Instagram or just send us an email. It's downsouthhunt@gmail.com. So I appreciate you listening. Let's go ahead and get this interview going. All right, I've got Justin Lanclos on the line from LouisianaBowhunter.com. I found Justin's website and also his Facebook info and saw that there's a ton of interesting stuff about him that I thought would be good to dive into a little bit. But to be honest, we haven't talked a whole lot, so Justin's new to me as well, so I guess we'll get to know him together. Justin, how's it going?
Great, Mike. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing all right. We're both getting over being sick a little bit. We've had to postpone the interview a couple times, and unfortunately Adam could not make it because we had to move him around a little bit. But we wanted to go ahead and get this in and get this out there. I guess, first of all, how's your season been so far this year?
I had a great season. Got into it pretty easy. I was able to spend more time in the woods this spring and summer than ever else. Probably one of the things that most people know about me is I had a tree stand accident last year. So I've been off of work, so that allowed me to spend a little bit more time in the woods. So I was able to figure the deer out pretty quick. At my lease here, it's on about 30 minutes from me. I got a nice 8-point and then a doe, and I take an annual trip to Kentucky the first week in November that went from near misery to last minute heroics on someone's part. I wouldn't say it was me, but it ended up real nice. I took a nice, right at 130 inch, 8-point, about 10 minutes after I shot a doe. The
Nice.
last 2 hours of the last hunt that was already extended because my wife told me I better not come home with nothing. It was supposed to be a 6 or 7 day hunt. And, man, I don't know if it was the entire country that first week in November. It was hot. There was 35, 40 mile an hour wind gusts in Kentucky that week. The moon was full. The deer just were not moving at all. And, there was a front coming through the night after the day that I was supposed to leave. And, I'd been kind of buttering my wife up all week, letting her know, man, the deer aren't moving. I actually went 3 hunts without seeing a single deer.
Wow.
And, that's very rare for the farm that I hunt in Kentucky. They actually had the QDMA, kids hunt while I was there. And, it was tough on them as well. So I knew it wasn't, something that I was doing wrong, but long story short, that front came through and, just as suspected, the floodgates open on the deer movement. And I saw rutting activity immediately the next morning. Got some real good video of some little 1-year-olds that, apparently don't know how small their racks are. They're acting pretty big and bad. It's actually the first time I've seen one do that, pin his ears back real far and fluff his hair up, to the razorback style and try to pick a fight with another buck that was out in the winter wheat field that I was watching. And then that evening I was supposed to hunt that same field because there was a ton of deer came out into that field that day. They were moving a bunch of equipment out of the bottom. And, the guy that runs the farm told me, he's like, man, I hate to do this to you. I know you've already got everything set up there, but I need you to go hunt field 1. I was like, well, I actually lost a really good buck in that field last year. I was like, well, let's make a great story, if I end up getting one in here. And, it was probably about 3:30. I had a doe come out 23 yards. I shot her and I was done as far as I was concerned. I was like, it's been 9 days or however long it was. I got a big doe. I'm happy. I was on the phone with my buddy Devin and I could hear some crunching in the leaves. Like, man, I got to go. And, looked down, sure enough, I could see antlers coming through the leaves and he was outside the ears. I could tell he was mature. I was like, that's it. Shot him at like 13 yards broadside and, they died about 10 feet from each other. So it was, I went from 0 to hero pretty quick. It was, never been a part of a hunt where came down to the last minute like that.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. Is that like an outfitter or a lease, or how's that work?
That's a private farm up there. I've got a buddy that is the foreman on a private farm. The farm's actually split by a highway, and the owner of the farm allows him to pretty much do as he pleases on the west side of the highway, I guess it is, and bring his guests and whatnot. So we hunt over there, and there's some monsters out there. I mean, anybody that's hunted Western Kentucky knows. Not only is it some of the most beautiful land I've hunted in North America, but there's just monster bucks. The Kentucky Wildlife and Fisheries does an excellent job managing up there. There's plenty of food, plenty of place to hide, and I really enjoy hunting the topography as well. You get true pinch points up there that you don't really get in most places in Louisiana that are either flat pine plantations or bottomland, swamp, or marsh.
Yeah, so why don't we kind of transition back to Louisiana a little bit, and if you could tell me basically about the property that you hunt. I know you already mentioned you had a lease, and I believe I read you've done quite a bit of public land hunting as well in Louisiana, so maybe if you can kind of give me a rundown of the types of property you hunt.
Sure, man. Yeah. First off, just a little history on Louisiana that a lot of people don't realize. You can hunt the whitetail rut in Louisiana anywhere from end of September all the way through mid-February, which is when our season closes. We've got a 5.5 month deer season. The reason that is they restocked our whitetail herd back in the 60s, I believe, with deer from all over the country. And that's, I guess, the DNA differences, the genetics of them, whatever it is, they all rut at different times. So where I'm at in Southwest Louisiana, you can hunt deer. Our season opens mid-September. They start rutting the first week of October. South Central Louisiana, down in the marsh, they're the beginning of September, mid-September they're rutting. So by the time their archery season opens, you've got rutting bucks already, and it's over pretty quick over there. Which on the opposite side of it, along the Mississippi River right now, which is the east side of the state, you've got bucks that are just now starting to show signs of the rut, and will continue to rut through the end of January. And the secondary rut, any of the does that didn't get bred the first time will come back in to estrus. So you can pretty much chase the rut around the state for 5 straight months and get pretty good action. But I hunt the southwest corner of the state. We're mostly piney woods. The leased property you're leasing from lumber companies that have planted pine trees to cut and use for paper and lumber. It's hard to find deer sign in pine trees. There's pine needles all over the ground. There's not a lot of great browse for them to eat, so I rely on supplemental feeding throughout the off season, starting now through about August, which is when they'll lose their velvet.
What are you guys feeding?
I was feeding protein pellets last year's 19% protein, and a couple of the bucks that were killed on the lease, people had mentioned that they had noticed the bucks were fatter, had more fat on them than they had ever noticed before. I was like, well, I put about 1,800 pounds of protein through one of my feeders, and those bucks that they were commenting on, I've got frequent pictures of them eating out of those gravity feeders that I was using. So you've almost got to do something like that to get your bucks over 150 pounds down here.
Yeah.
The 8-point that I shot, I guess that was first week of October. He didn't touch 150 pounds. And on the contrast, along the Mississippi River, where you've got the alluvial soil and croplands and tons of acorns, and they've got soybeans, is a big agricultural crop over there. We've had bucks go over 300 pounds this year, right at 300 pounds. So it's
wow.
There's a huge contrast in the deer from one side of the state to the other, which is no more than a 3-hour drive. And it's primarily from the soil. Our soil is totally different here. It's sandy and acidic, and it takes tons and tons of lime to make anything grow worthwhile. And over there, you could parishes along the Mississippi River, you can almost throw seeds on the concrete and it'll grow and look great and be super nutritious. Just the soil's so fertile.
Yeah, it's real interesting. The last couple guests that we've had on have been from Southwest Louisiana, which I totally by chance. But it's funny, both of those guys travel to Southwest Mississippi to hunt. Neither one of them hunts local that much. So is the lease that you have local?
Yes, it's local.
Okay, so that's a pine.
Pretty much. Yeah, it's 99% pine plantation. And the reason I've got a local lease, I've got 3 young children, and we can be in the stand from my house in 45 minutes. And it's a place to go and teach them and have a place to camp and do all that. When I'm wanting to kill something big, I'll go to the east side of the state, the northeast side of the state, or Kentucky, or anywhere else out of state. But yeah, most of the guys that live on the east side of Louisiana go to Southwest Mississippi. It's amazing what a mile and a half across a river will do. Pretty much anybody that knows anything around here will tell you it's the management practices of Mississippi as opposed to Louisiana that have the deer they do. But it's a stark contrast across the river on both sides, actually. Texas as well. Sabine River borders us to the west, and you can cross the river there, and a deer that's perfectly legal here is completely illegal in Texas.
That's interesting. Yeah, so it sounds like the area you're in is actually real similar to how it is here in Florida, with the pine plantations and sandy soil, tough to grow much, probably smaller deer. Is the east side of the state also have a lot more elevation change as well?
Some parts of the east side of the state, just north of Baton Rouge, there's a little section that's got just a ton of elevation change, and then also kind of in the central part of the state. And I say a ton of elevation change. I'm not talking Rocky Mountains. I'm talking 50 feet,
Yeah.
But it's a
southern
a
elevation
great,
change, and I guess
right?
not talking
Yeah.
Appalachian.
No, no, that's Flatlander talking, and some of the stuff that we say would wear us out. These guys that live in the mountains or in the hills would laugh and call us a myriad of names, I'm sure. The biggest advantage over there, like I said, is the topography and the oak bottoms. There's just that Mississippi River pushes some fertile soil down it and deposits it along the parishes along that river, and it shows up in the deer body size and in their antler size. It's evident. I mean, you'll have for instance, I looked at our DMAP numbers a while back. That's the deer management area.
Yeah.
That the Wildlife and Fisheries does, with the local land owners and VCs. I want to say the 3.5-year-olds in the parish that I hunt in over here, which is Beauregard Parish, was like an 8 point, 14 inches, and something like 136 pounds, something like that maybe. And then in contrast, we'll just pick Avoyelles Parish, which is a well-known parish along the Mississippi River. 3.5-year-old deer, same thing, would have a 16-inch inside spread. It'd probably still be an 8 point, but the body size would be up close to 200 pounds.
Yeah, that's a huge difference.
And it's insane. It's convenience over here is about all it is. A place to introduce the kids to the outdoors. We have fun catching hogs and shooting hogs in the off season and coyotes and all that.
So when you're hunting on the east side of the state, what type of properties are you hunting over there? If you've got a lease over on the west side, where are you hunting on the east side?
I'm going to public land on the east side. There is, I want to say, over 1 million acres of public property in Louisiana combined. And some of the best public lands are along the Mississippi River. Unfortunately, I can't name any of them because I'd have a whole lot of people mad at me. Yeah. But the ones along the Mississippi River hold the biggest deer. Those swamps, our bucks love water. Anybody that hunts in Louisiana, southern Arkansas, or Mississippi, will tell you get around the water, and that's where the bucks are going to be. They feel safe there. They can get away from hunters there. Most hunters aren't going to put on their hip boots and walk 2 miles through chest deep water to get to their stand. And the bucks know that, obviously, but it's true Louisiana. It feels like over there. You got palmetto swamps, cypress trees, 12 different kind of oak trees with, you could pick up a different acre in every 10 feet. Something over there that you've got to contend with, though, is black bears. Now they reintroduced black bears. Say a couple of years ago. It was more like 20 probably, but they've thrived. Our Department of Wildlife and Fisheries did an excellent job getting the bears back to the numbers that they were before, and we're hoping and thinking and expecting to actually have a bear season in Louisiana within the next few years once they reach a sustainable population, which would be awesome because there's a couple of public lands. You've got to try to get away from the bears. Are
the hogs bad on that side of the state as well?
The hogs are bad everywhere. They're everywhere, man. To put it in perspective, I killed 42 pigs this year between the end of deer season and before deer season started this year.
Wow.
And that's through snares, through hunting at night and the traps. It was a collective operation between me and a couple of guys at the lease. But 42, and we didn't even put a dent in them. One of the numbers on pigs, you got to kill 75% of the population for it to stay maintained, for it to be level, not grow anymore.
Yeah.
And it's almost impossible.
Yeah, that's crazy.
They're everywhere, and they're so smart. In fact, I saw on TV the other day somebody said they have the intelligence of a 4-year-old human.
Huh.
And if you've ever been around a 4-year-old human, yeah. They learn what to do and what not to do really quick.
I would like to challenge that. I have a 4-year-old right now, and I've never heard a pig that can talk, but
yeah,
but
I think it was the problem-solving ability.
Okay, so I'm really excited about getting into tactics and strategies with you because it sounds like you've kind of got a wide array of that. But before I do that, I want to get into LouisianaBowhunter.com. Can you kind of tell me, I guess, first of all, what it is, and then kind of go in as to how it got started and what you do with it?
Sure, man. LouisianaBowhunter.com was it was something that I'd been wanting to do for a long time. I started it in 2015. Yeah, 2015. It's hard to believe it's been 3 years already. Just as a place to, I guess, just as a hobby, really. I didn't really know what to expect out of it. I just wanted a place to spend some extra time and just talk to like-minded people and encourage people. And, you know, there was nothing special. There was no business plan about it. It was just, hey, I'm going to make a website for Louisiana bow hunters to, you know, come together and share our stories. And it was really before the Facebook groups took off and whatnot. So I guess I kind of thought that's where it would go, that direction. But it quickly evolved. A year after I started it, I met a great guy through there. His name's Kyler Moppert, who is now my business partner. And, man, he's really helped expand my mind. He's a business professional by trade and in sales. And, it's developed into a website where we are strategically helping our pro shops and our local business owners and entrepreneurs in the outdoor industry, gain traction through visibility on the website. And also we're expanding the, participation in archery around the state and in bow hunting. And, you know, we promote ethical hunting. We promote, you know, just doing the right thing and doing it the right way and making it easier. You know, we want to make people successful. We want people to enjoy being in the outdoors, and we want to share with the rest of the country what it's like to hunt deer in a state in scenarios that you can't find anywhere else in this country. You know, Louisiana is one of the best kept secrets in the country as far as I'm concerned. Our deer are super pressured, but we've got such a wide array, as I just talked about, of deer. I mean, you can hunt 2 different subspecies in our state. You can hunt 7 or 8 different terrain types in our state. It's just, you know, unique here. And so we've grown a community of really passionate bow hunters and, you know, share tactics with each other. And like I said, we just went to ATA for the first time this year, and I did some videos. I mean, that was really neat to see some of the stuff that's coming out and how much it costs. It's some pretty wild stuff there. You know, so it's developed really into a way to give back and a way to hopefully leave a legacy, not from me or from Kyler. We don't promote ourselves. We promote bow hunting, and we promote archery, and we promote shopping local. And if we can help those 3 things, then we've done our job.
All right, so let's kind of jump into tactics a little bit. One thing that you kind of hit on real quick, and I have to ask you about, is you mentioned your tree stand accident last year, and seems like a crazy way to try to get out of work for a while. So can you kind of go through that story and yeah, what happened with that?
Sure, man. Yeah, that was July 2016. I was setting up, and July probably seems early to a lot of people to be setting up your stands. But that was about 7 weeks before our season opens. It was super hot. I was setting up the 5th set of that morning, the 5th and the last one. There was one area that I was keying in on that year, and I pretty much had a set for every wind possible, and then one extra just in case. And we're on our last one. It was I had my 9-year-old son with me. He's 11 now. He was 9 then, and they were all lock-ons. And I was up in the lock-on. I remember looking down. He had the machete and was clearing out some briars and limbs from the trail just so I wouldn't brush them coming in. And I told him, all right, buddy, we're done. Let's go home. And I put one foot on the very top of my climbing sticks while still having my right foot on my lock-on platform. And I grabbed a tree limb to hold me while I pulled all the weight off of the stand onto my sticks. But when I transferred weight from that stand to that limb was rotten, and it broke, and I fell back, and realizing that I was falling and there was no turning back, I kicked at the tree to push off, which is probably the move that saved my life because that allowed me to land on my feet. But landing on my feet, my left leg took the brunt of the impact. I sprained both ankles. The tibial plateau, which is the top flat part of your shin bone, shoved up into my femur. Excuse me, it shattered my femur. It broke my hip between the angle and the hip bone. It shoved the ball of the hip into my pelvis. It tore the labrum in my hip, which is kind of the O-ring that holds your hip in your pelvis. I tore the meniscus. I tore a couple of tendons. Long story short, I've had 2 surgeries since then, hundreds and hundreds of hours of physical therapy, and I've got to walk with what's called an unloader brace now. It keeps my leg from bowing out really bad because I guess it's the PCL and the MCL, whichever tendons are on the inside and the outside of the knee, they look like accordions, and like my knee will actually separate in the mornings whenever I first wake up. If I pivot on it, just all that stuff in there is still loose. And apparently they won't do a knee replacement surgery until you're 45 at least. So I've got 9 more years of doing what I can until I do a total replacement and a total recomposition of the knee and all the components in the knee. But I tell you, man, physical therapy sucks, but I wouldn't be walking had I not pushed through that. I had an awesome physical therapist, and this whole thing, putting my son through that ordeal. When I woke up, he was on my chest, crying. He thought I had died, and I thought something was way worse whenever I came to, because I saw blood on the leaves, so I thought I was bleeding internally. First thing I did was feel my eyes, my nose, my mouth, and my ears to see where the blood was coming from, but it was coming from my forehead just because I'd smashed my face on the ground after my knee collapsed, I assume.
Oh, man, so you fell forward.
I fell backwards, but kicking off of the tree allowed me to upright myself.
Right.
So when I hit, when
you landed, you fell forward. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, but I tell you,
What
man, that near miss has made me completely rethink not only safety with not just tree stands, with everything, but life in general. With, like I said, you've got 4 kids, I've got 3 kids. I can count on one hand since my accident the time I've told them, no, I don't feel like doing that right now. They want me to come watch them play a video game. Daddy's going to watch them play a video game. They want me to go outside to the football. Daddy's going outside and throwing the football. Life's too short to be selfish and to think about your best interests, man.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's a lot of times with your leg, you don't feel like doing that kind of stuff.
No, yeah, I mean, it's there's and especially on days that I've been on it for a while, it gets sore and tight every day. My days start and end like that, and it's not their fault. That my leg hurts. It's nobody's fault but my own. So I refuse to take that out on them. So yeah, that's the story of my tree stand fall. I should have bought stock in Hunter safety systems before I fell, because I know that I've sold a bunch of harnesses. That was one thing that I was really really committed to after I realized I wasn't going to die or anything, is that I can't, as embarrassing as it was, because I always wear my harness, always wore my harness during the season. But for whatever reason, I never wore it setting up, and I think it's just, number one, I know I didn't want to get it all stinky and sweaty. And number two, I was like, I'm only in the tree for like 5 minutes. I've done this a million times. It's not going to happen to me. Well, at the end of the day, you're tired, you're hot and sweaty, you're ready to go home. You take shortcuts, whether it's knowing or non-knowing, and things happen fast. And that could be, at work, that could be at home, it could be, in the tree like it was with me. That transfers to every situation in life.
Oh, wow. So what are the steps you take now when you're setting up a hang-on? It sounds like you probably still are hunting mobile quite a bit with the public land. So how's that work?
Well, it's a lot different now. Whether it's I'm climbing into the stand or setting up for the first time, number one, I've always got a harness on. After the initial setup, I've got a lifeline in every set. So I attach from the ground. I stay attached in the lifeline to my seat, and then I don't detach until I'm on the ground again. The initial setup, I'll use a lineman's belt to go up the tree, and then I'll use the lifeline. I'll tie the stand on the end of the lifeline. Once I'm up the tree, I'll keep the lineman's belt wrapped around the tree, attach the stand to the tree, and then attach the lineman's belt. The lifeline, and then I'll attach myself to the lifeline. So you constantly just staying connected 100% of the time is the key. Along with your 3 points of contact. And there's a ton of great products out now. I saw one at ATA that makes your descension a lot easier if you fall. There's so many ways to fall, and 40% of the falls happen in the transition in and out of the stand. And if you're only wearing a harness is going to save you in your transition. A harness isn't going to save you in your ascent or your descent. A harness is only good, number one, when you've got it tied on, and number two, when you're in your chair, and your lock on or in your ladder stand. And the rest of the percentages is mechanical failures of the stands. People think they're safe in a ladder stand, and they don't think about the damage that's done to the inside of it that's not painted. How rusted are the inside of those legs after it's sat out there for 4 years. And after Thanksgiving and Christmas meals, we've put on a few extra pounds, and we climb up in that sucker, and those legs start to bend. I fell 22 feet, and people always say, oh, man, that's horrible. Well, the falling wasn't the bad part. It's hitting the ground that's bad. And whether it's 15 feet or 20 feet or 30 feet, I very well could have been killed. I've heard stories of multiple guys at this point that have died from falling shorter distances than I did.
Yeah, wow. Well, it's a miracle you were able to land on your feet, and
yeah,
and that your son was there to help you out. I guess there's a lot of good situations with that horrible situation.
Yeah, but as far as the public land goes, I've really had to exacerbate kind of what I did before was just really keep your load light, because I would do a ton of walking before. Now obviously I can't do a ton of walking. But I really pay attention to how heavy my stuff is. My favorite stand, if I'm not really sure what kind of setup I'm going to have or where I'm going, or if I'm just going in blind, is the Millennium M7. That thing is super light. It's super compact. It's super easy to hang up. I don't think there's any lock on that's that comfortable that's anywhere near the weight of it. And I'd be lying if I told you how much it weighs, but it's super light.
I want to say it's like 8.5 pounds if I remember right. I know it's super light, like you said.
It's super light. Yeah, man, that thing, that Millennium style seat is hard to beat in all day sits.
So how big of a guy are you? Because I know that's a pretty small stand.
I am 6'1", 200 pounds.
Okay, so you're a pretty big guy. So obviously, if you find it comfortable, then probably a lot of guys would.
Yeah, and my left leg, I can't bend it all the way. I'll have to stand up a couple times a day. Stretch the legs, straighten the back. The key for me in lock-ons is finding a tree that's leaning back a little bit. If you're in a tree where you're constantly having to have your elbows on your knees, or you're sitting straight up with perfect posture, that gets old quick. 11 o'clock in the morning, you're like, man, I'm ready to go back to the truck. The key is getting out of someone. If I can make it till 2, I can make it the whole day. And especially on public land, sitting all day is key. The best deer that I've seen and killed have been either midday after the rest of the hunters have left, or early afternoon, whether it be other hunters walking in and pushing them. That would probably be the best thing that I can tell people as far as public land hunting in Louisiana is you've got to hunt the pressure that the other hunters put on the deer. Because when there's people out there, you can't consider any pattern solid or concrete. You've got to learn what the other hunters around you are doing. And my idea is go where I think they're going to push the deer. whether it's go farther, whether it's not go as far, whether it's go, to the opposite side of a creek or the opposite side of a thicket where the deer would escape to a secure bedding area or whatnot. Hunt where I think the other hunters aren't going to, and where the deer are going to flee from their access and intrusion.
So you mentioned earlier that on the public land, especially on the east side there, that the deer love being around and in the water. Are you using water to access? Do you use a boat to access them very much, or are you walking in usually? How's that work?
Well, since my fall, I will be using a boat more. There have been a couple of instances where. Do you have any idea what a P-row is? You ever heard that word?
Yeah, I've heard somebody talk about that, and
perfect.
if you can go into that a little bit.
Man, anybody that's got, any size rivers, creeks, lakes, whatever, there's so many advantages to using a boat to getting in. Number one, you're not making any noise. Number two, you're not leaving any scent. And number three, you can outsmart the wind per se. Say if you've got a wind in the wrong direction that you'd have to walk, with a tailwind in, obviously you don't want to do in a bow hunting scenario, and you've got a body of water on the north side or on the opposite side of your hunting area. You can hop in the water and paddle over and come in from a reverse angle. A P-row is pretty much just like a canoe. It's a Cajun boat that I'd say most of us use. You don't see any canoes around here. It's a flat bottom boat. Some of them have flat backs. You can put a trolling motor on it. They're just a real shallow boat. They make them out of either cypress or fiberglass. The fiberglass ones are super light, and you can throw a stand, your bow, and a deer in there, and pretty much get wherever you want to go, whether it's super shallow water or deep water. I mean, they're more an advantage in shallow water that being a flat bottom and really shallow, they'll get over log jams and whatnot a little easier. But yeah, there's one particular refuge that I hunted that's got just a ton of creeks in it, and I want to say it was probably 4 or 5 miles. No, that was a round trip, so it had been about 2 miles from the truck walking in, and it only was maybe a 400-yard paddle. If I had started using the boat from this bridge, I was like, well, that's a no-brainer, man. Not only I don't have to walk through where the deer are bedded, not only am I not going to leave my scent in there, but I can get in and out real quick. And nobody else knows I'm in here because I'm parking, on the other side of the road. So there's tons of advantages to it. The silence and sneakiness of it is probably the biggest of them.
What are those creeks like? I mean, is it a lot of grass in there, or it's open water? I mean, forgive me for this, but when I think of the water in Louisiana, I can't help but think of swamp people in the way that is. So how typical is that?
That's fairly typical along the Mississippi River. Swamp People's filmed in the southern part of the state, I believe. I know, when I was watching, that's where most of it was, in around Houma and south of Lafayette. But you'll have cypress trees and willow trees along these creeks. The creeks that I'm talking about specifically are anywhere from 2 to 6 feet deep, maybe 20, 30 feet wide, a slow current. About the only obstacles you would have in it would be cypress knees or beaver dams, or maybe just some log jams from rotted limbs that have fallen in and gotten stuck on cypress knees. So you could pretty much navigate it, with no light in the morning, especially with any kind of moon. The moon's pretty much your headlight. So you can, especially if you're going down current, you just get in and pretty much steer. And it's the most quiet way to access adventures other than being dropped off by an airplane. It's you don't make any noise at all.
Are you paddling or poling it? How do you typically?
Yeah, paddling.
Okay.
Yeah, one paddle will do it. One paddle. Every few seconds. It's just a real silent approach. You paddle in it just like you're walking to sneak up on something, as quiet as you possibly can, making sure the paddle doesn't hit the side of the boat, and then changing sides and paddling on another side. The tricky part is getting out at the end. A lot of those banks are fairly steep, so you've got to line the boat up parallel to the bank and then get out. That's about the only time where you have an opportunity to make a lot of noise. And if anybody's done it quite a bit, there's guys who use kayaks as well. I know more of us than not have had to go back to the truck because that first step out of the boat's a doozy. We end up getting soaking wet.
Do you typically paddle sitting down in a P-row or standing up?
Yeah, oh yeah, sitting down.
Okay.
Definitely sitting down. Yeah,
like a canoe. Okay.
They're more, they're more sturdy than a canoe. But I mean, if you hit a cypress knee standing up in a P-row, you're going swimming.
Okay. So let's start at the beginning a little bit. How do you typically scout these places? Do you start online, looking for places online, and what do you look for?
OnX Maps is the way that I scout places, period. Man, since that app came out, I mean, it cuts so much time that you don't have to waste anymore in the summer putting feet on the ground and putting your scent in these places. I really like, I could tell you about looking in Southwest Louisiana, I really like the winter pictures. And you can tell real easy if the satellite imagery is from the winter or not, because pine trees are evergreens, obviously. They stay green all year. So you can look for that one dead tree in the middle of your pine plantation, and you're like, boom, that's where I'm starting. And go see if that's an oak tree, and go see if it had acorns.
Yeah.
I mean, and if you find the one white oak tree in a 200-acre pine plantation, you hit the lottery. You know, I mean, it's easy. Find you a couple of trees and mark them for whatever wind it's going to be, and then just set up in that tree coinciding with your wind. The other thing I'll look for is ridges in the bottomland areas along the river. You look for ridges that the deer use to cross between the swamps. It's a little easier for them to walk. They've got a little better view of their surroundings as opposed to walking down in the bottom and through mud and water. They don't have issues walking through them. It's insane to me that the deer, can walk through some of the things that they walk through. I've got a size 13 shoe, for instance, and walking through some of that mud is like, man, how the heck does a deer with a 2-inch hoof not sink all the way to their belly in this stuff? But that's one of the reasons I hunt deer, man. I've got so much respect for them, for their adaptiveness, for their intelligence, their will to survive and live. They're an incredible animal.
Do they typically travel the tops of those ridges or off down to the side a little bit so they're not skylighted?
Well, they're not going to be. Let me explain our ridges. Our ridges aren't like ridges in the rest of the country. It's a 4 or 5 foot dry line in the middle of the swamp. That's full of palmettos, and there's no skylining possible.
Right.
Now some of the places that have greater elevation changes, you could get a 10, 20 foot ridge. They're either going to walk along the top of it or what I say is the first line. That first line that you see on the topography map, that's normally where I start looking for a trail. Best guess is about a third of the way down, whether that be 2 feet or 10 feet, depending on the side of the ridge. As close to the top without going all the way to the top as possible.
Okay, and are you finding those on an elevation map on a topo, or are you finding those based on the terrain?
Start with a topo map. That'll give me the topo map gives me starting points. What I'll do is if I'm going to say a piece of property that I've never hunted before, for instance the property in Kentucky or any of the public lands here. If I'm going for a weekend or for a week, I'll get on that topo map and start looking for ridges and start looking for pinch points, and then I'll drop a pin on those spots, and that is where I go to first to scout. And if I see sign in there, if I can see definite trails in there, I'll leave the pin there. If not, I'll erase the pin and go to the next spot. So it's a progression. I'll start with the map, and then I'll go in and look at it and see if my guess was right. And if it is, stay there, and if not, move on.
What type of sign do you typically look for to confirm that's a good spot?
I'll look for feeder trees. I'll look for scrapes and rubs, obviously. I'll look for heavily beat down trails. A good trail in some of our public property looks like a motorcycle trail. It'll look like cattle's walk through it. The trails where there's just a couple of tracks, I don't really even pay attention to. I want the deer to have access in and out of the area that I'm going to be hunting, and safely, and hopefully in between food and bedding. I normally don't try to get in super close to where I think they're bedding until late in the season if I absolutely have to. But I'd like to pinpoint where they're going to eat, where they're sleeping, and try to get somewhere in the middle.
Oh, what do you typically look for food sources? I know you mentioned oak trees a couple times. Is there anything else you look for?
Yeah, acorns and clear cuts provide a ton of food down here. Once the trees get up to a certain size, the pine trees, they'll cut them and then replant, and that allows all this native browse to grow up, whether it be greenbrier, blackberries, poison ivy, poison oak. There's a ton of natural browse, and it's really easy to identify the ones that have been nipped by deer. So pretty much anywhere there's a clear cut or anywhere there's a CRP, which is going to be more popular along the river, that thick bedding area, and a browse buffet, I call it. We had a biologist out at our lease early in the year, and there was, I want to say, 5 or 6 times the amount of species that have been browsed on in a clear cut. Which, I mean, if you think about it, it's not surprising. There's so much more sun there, which is why if you've got your own property, management practices encourage you to cut junk trees, trash trees that don't do any of the wildlife any good, to get more sunlight to the ground, to get some of this native grass and native browse growing, to provide food for the deer and the forest as well, the canopy.
Yeah. Okay, so let me tell you kind of what I'm understanding, and you tell me if I'm hitting on this right or not. So on say a public piece, you're gonna start on maybe a transition area near water, whether that be like a cypress hammock or the edge of a creek or something along those lines. And those type areas, you're gonna be starting out where the bedding is. Then you're going to work and look back to possibly where the feeding might be, which might be, say, oak trees or clear cut, something along those lines. And then you're going to try to find somewhere in between that's going to be like a ridge or some type of travel corridor. And that's where you're going to focus your hunting spots on.
Nailed it.
Okay.
That's it, man.
All right.
It's easy.
I'm ready to buy my Louisiana tag and come out and kill some public land bruisers.
Anybody can do it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, man, there's, like I said, there's so many. Louisiana hunters are as diverse as our deer. Everybody's got their own tactic that they believe in and, swear by, and some would say is the only way to do it. And that's the thing. It's just like fishing. Find a bait that you're confident in and throw it. And the more you do it, the more you throw it, your odds continue to increase. The main thing that, especially in our trying to educate new bow hunters and deer hunters that are transitioning to bow hunting, whether it be through a crossbow or just beginning to bow hunt, is you have got to play the wind, and you have got to minimize your impact in the deer's common areas. Their regular travel corridors, their bedding and their feeding areas, or they'll change it, and all the research that you've done, it will be for nothing, especially on the mature ones. That's, anybody can go in and set up, under a tree and shoot a spike or, a young doe. But hunting the mature whitetails is, it's a whole other ball game, man. They're a smart, very observant animal, and you really got to leave no trace of being in their home.
All right. So we kind of hit on the public land. I'd like to talk a little bit about your lease a little bit and talk about pine plantations, because a ton of the southeast U.S. is pine plantations, and they're notoriously tough to hunt because of a lot of the monotonous landscape. So maybe can you touch on a couple differences of what you do on your lease versus the public land?
Yeah, man, the lease is totally different. Food and security are the two things that I focus on. A lot of the leases around here, you're either given, X amount of stands or a certain amount of acreage. And the worst thing you could possibly do if you've got a block of land is, just go keep walking it all and be present in all of it. You've pretty much got to set it up like your own little private parcel. Leave part of it as a sanctuary and set it up as such, and assume that that's where your deer are going to be coming from. And then don't hunt when your wind's going to be blowing into that area. Set it up as a bedding area, and design it that way. And then the less scent that you allow to blow through it, the deer are eventually going to figure out, hey, nobody's intruding here. Let's go stay here. And that's the lease is really where the expensive part comes of it, preparing the soil to get you a good food plot, with, diverse seeds that are going to last throughout the entire season. And this year's been nuts, man, with the amount of snow that we've gotten. It never snows in South Louisiana, and it snowed twice this year. We had nearly a week of sub 25 degree weather, which again is nuts. Our average low in my part of the state is probably around 40, and then highs in the upper 50s, I believe. And like last week, it got down to like 15 degrees. So all the browse is dead right now. So if you've put the right stuff in, primarily clover, which looks like it surpassed the freeze and the ice, those plots are getting just absolutely hammered. I can look in my front yard at the clover and tell you that.
Yeah.
All the grass is dead, but you can see that clover real easy. The other thing, using corn and soybeans or whatever else, minerals is perfectly legal in Louisiana, and we'll keep food going all year long for them. That way they know where they can go. And the trick there is just not to pressure it. If you're shooting the first thing that comes out every time, those deer are going to learn they only need to go to that feeder at night, or they only need to go out in that food plot at night, and they'll start working their lives around you real quick. So I'd say, if nothing else, man, security is the key to success on a lease. Not walking all over the place, hunting the right winds. And that's whether you're a rifle or a bow hunter. I know a lot of rifle hunters don't take wind into the consideration, but if you're wanting to kill a buck outside of that 1 to 2 week rut window, make them feel at home around your stand. Don't access it every 3 days with your truck or your four-wheeler to go check your trail cameras. And you make them feel safe, and make them feel safe coming out during the day, and you'll start killing deer.
How many acres is that lease you got?
It's 2,300 acres. I'm not sure how many members are on it. But we've all got blocks.
Right, that's going to be my next question. Yeah. So how much area you controlling yourself?
It's a little over 100 acres, I believe. And I was lucky. It was right on the edge. I had a little bit of I guess about 7-year-old pines, which was super, super thick, tons of briars. It's literally impenetrable to humans, but the deer were all bedded out in it. And then we just had roads cut, in between the trees. And that's where we had to plant. If you know anything about pine trees, they're super acidic. And iron clay peas actually grow really well in acidic soil. I had the best luck with those. Anything else, had to put so much lime and fertilizer down, it almost felt like it wasn't worth the effort. But iron clay peas, you can throw down with minimal effort, and they're going to grow. And the deer are going to eat them so fast anyways. A lot of times they don't, well, not a lot of times. Every time I've planted them out there, I never see a single pea. As soon as that new growth comes out of the ground, the deer are hammering it.
Yeah, I've heard that's the issue with iron clay peas and I've planted them some too. Actually, I had one stand that, I take that back. That was winter peas. But I've heard iron clay peas it's tough to even get them out of the ground. It's almost like throwing corn down because they're basically eating whatever comes out.
Yeah, as when people ask me, how soon should I plant iron clay peas? I'll tell them no farther out than a week before you plan on hunting it. Because as soon as there's green coming out of the ground, if you don't have an isolator around your whole plot, they are going to destroy it.
How many acres of plots do you have?
Well, our plots are linear, if that makes sense. You know, we plant them on the road. So so they're not, it'd be really hard for me to guesstimate. You know, we've got a couple that are 500-600 yards long, but they're only 10-15 yards wide.
Right. That's tough to bow hunt, man.
Yeah. Ground blinds and ground blinds.
Yeah.
along those.
I can just imagine. I saw 67 deer tonight, but they were all, 50 to 300 yards away.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to you've got to pick one side of that trail where the majority of them are accessing it, and that's where the preseason scouting comes in. Driving out there in the truck and sitting at the very end of it with binoculars and watching where the majority of the deer are coming out, or where one particular deer is coming out, and then going in there and finding that trail and rolling the dice. Okay, I think the wind's going to be out of the south early season, so I'm going to put my ground blind on the north side of this trail and hope they come out. Your shot's either going to be right up next to you or no shot at all.
Yeah.
Okay. There's nothing worse. There's nothing worse than watching a monster at 400 yards with your bow in your hand.
Yeah. Be enough to make you want to pick up a rifle, huh?
Yeah, almost. Not quite. Almost.
Yeah. Well, it's tough when you run LouisianaBowhunter.com. You're kind of stuck with it.
I have to say that. Exactly. Yeah. I got to say that.
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier you were trying to get 5 stands set up and then some ground blinds as well. So how many different stand sites do you have on 100 acres?
Oof, man, a ton. There's pretty much, I couldn't even tell you, man. They're pretty much every corner. And a lot of that right now has to do with my son's 11 and he's getting to the point to where, he made his first hunt by himself this year. So I've got spots that may or may not be strategically placed, just easy access that's not going to interfere with anybody else.
Yeah.
So
do you have club stands and club food plots and stuff as well, or is it just you basically get your 100 acres?
Yeah, on this one you just get your section. Now on my dad's lease, they have club stands, and the main reason they have those is because they'll hunt the pipelines, which is going to be just an open area like the highline would. So you may have to cross 3 or 4 people depending on how far down the highline you are, or the pipeline. So if you get there late one day, you can just hop in a club stand that's right along the road, or you don't have to cross anybody else. It's pretty much for convenience purposes more than anything else.
So how often do you hunt that lease?
Early season and up until I went to Kentucky, multiple times a week. Pretty much after Thanksgiving, it's about done over here. And I said the rut's in October, and they'll shut it down and kind of go into hiding for a while once gun season starts. There's a lot more 4-wheelers and trucks and booms in the woods, and you see a definite change in behavior once gun season starts. And I really didn't hunt a whole lot late season this year. I had anticipated going over to the east side of the state and had some stuff going on here around the house and with the website and whatnot, and just never made it. Didn't make it a priority, I guess. I killed my deer early this year, so it wasn't I wasn't that mad at them anymore after Thanksgiving, I guess.
So it sounds like with the lease, your strategy for the most part is kind of hunt the edge of that protected area, kind of work your way around, and don't pressure enough to move out to the the other parts of the lease.
That's it, man.
As opposed to the public land where you're kind of going in after them, and if you blow a spot, it's no big deal. You got plenty of other ones.
Yep, that's it. On the lease, it was feed them early and feed them often and get them comfortable on my section, and then don't give them any reasons to leave. Period.
Yeah.
That's it.
Okay.
That's it. Tons and tons of protein pellets, brought them in, and then being very careful how I accessed it and what I did on it, especially right prior to the season, kept them there. And then getting the hogs off in the off season. If you've got hogs hanging around a food plot or a feeder, you can forget about the deer.
Yeah. So it sounds like that's almost as much work as the food plots and all that stuff is just hunting the hogs. Which fun work.
Yeah, it is fun sometimes.
You mentioned snares. Do you have traps as well?
Yeah, we had one big, I guess you would call it a corral trap. It was a big square that had a guillotine-style door on it with the trigger in the very back of the trap. It was probably 50 feet by 30 or 40 feet wide.
Wow,
that
that's really big.
We just kept. Yeah, it's huge. We kept it baited all year. You've pretty much got to catch one entire generation of pigs that's been educated to the trap before you can start catching more. Because once one adult pig knows that it's a trap, they'll stop the rest of them from going in.
Yeah.
You know, so earlier you had said you don't know any pigs that can talk. They're they're telling each other
communicating
it's a trap somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those buggers are smart, man.
Wow.
But yeah, the snares work the best just because they're, you know, you can move them, and between the snares and the cell phone trail cameras this year, that was my number one and number two weapons for getting rid of that many pigs. Those the cell trail cameras have totally changed the game. I mean, it's almost not fair.
So how many of those are you running, and how? Yeah, tell me how that works.
Yeah, so I ran 4 of them this year. I was running the Spy Point Link series. I had a couple of the Evos, which is the entry level model. I want to say those retail at $249, and you know, you download the free app and it sends the pictures to your phone. The first 100 pictures you get every month are free, so you don't have to purchase any price plan or data usage or anything like that if you don't want. But with the amount of pigs that I had the unlimited. You can purchase unlimited picture downloads for, I think it was $15 a month, and you just set it to send you the pictures whenever it takes them. You know, so if I'm out there hog hunting and, you know, my phone dings and it shows me I've got hogs 200 yards from here, you know, I'm not sitting here anymore. I'm going over there.
Is that at night or during the day typically?
Both.
Okay.
You know, you're a lot more. They're a lot more relaxed at night, and we did hunt them at night, late spring, early summer before it got real hot. But I'm not that mad at them. There's not anything I can think of that I hate more than a feral hog. But I'm not sitting all night in July or August getting chewed up by mosquitoes to kill a hog.
Yeah.
I'll let the traps and the snares do the dirty work at that point. But yeah, man, those cell cameras, you can move them, you know, trail by trail, leave it on a trail for 2 or 3 days. Nope, nothing came through there. I'll go move it. As opposed to leaving it out for 2 weeks, wondering if anything came through it, and then going checking. Oh, man, I just wasted 2 weeks. Nothing used this trail.
Yeah.
It's another tool to speed up the scouting.
So do you transition those to deer hunting in the fall?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got one that's got a solar panel on it. You actually don't even have to put batteries in it. So I mean, it stays running all year. That's something with my trail cameras. You know, people will talk about getting a ton of pictures, you know, during the summer, and then all of a sudden, boom, nothing. Trail cameras, just like anything else, you've got to have summer sets. You've got to have pre-rut sets, post-rut sets. You know, the deer change their patterns, you know, with the change of the seasons and what their priority is. You know, when they're still in their bachelor groups and still comfortable and still going out and eating every day at 6 o'clock until dark, you're going to get a lot of pictures. And then once that velvet drops, it's a whole new ball game. You got to move those cameras, move them into the woods and move them closer where the doe groups are, you know, and into some travel corridors, because it won't be long before they start looking for the ladies.
So how much of your hunting is rut based? You mentioned that you can kind of typically follow the rut across the state. Is that what you usually try to do?
That's what I've done in the past. You know, last year I hardly hunted at all, and then this year was a little different as well. You know, just getting my feet wet again after my fall. But that's normally what I would do. Is hunt over here early, and then as the rut evolved, it kind of moves north from here, and then it moves east, and then it moves back south along the river. Yeah, man, just hit the public lands where the rut was. And it's so easy to tell where the rut is now through Facebook, because all you got to do is track, you know, what parish or what area these deer are being killed in, and you'll see it. All of a sudden, boom, area 2, buck after buck after buck after buck's getting killed. You're like, man, the rut's on, and then it'll drop off, and then area 6, buck after buck after buck. So it's really easy to tell where you should be hunting. You just got to hit it those first few days that it happens.
And you guys have a huge Facebook page. Are there people posting their deer on your page, or is there somewhere you're just seeing it on friends, or how's that work?
Yeah, we I'll say we only share bow hunting kills. Every now and then one will be worthy of being shared. That's a gun kill. They had a lady killed one 2 or 3 weeks ago that I want to say that sucker grossed in the, oh man, I'd be lying. I want to say in the 260s. It was
goodness.
A monster. It is a monster. And, I prerequisited the post with, I know this is a Louisiana Bowhunter, but y'all are going to want to see this one. He was just insane. Again, along the Mississippi River. That soil grows big deer. But yeah, we actually did a photo contest this year. We did it, 1, to be able to, get people to share their kills, and 2, to be able to encourage people to take nicer, less offensive pictures. I'm the last person that cares about offending somebody. But I also realize that some of the stuff that we put on social media does more damage to ourselves than anything else as hunters. And so part of the criteria of that photo contest was the deer can't be in the back of a truck. The tongue needs to be tucked in. It needs to be cleaned up. You need to be sitting on the ground behind it. Have the tag on it. You just take a nice picture. We put a lot of effort into killing these animals. Give them some respect, and give yourself some respect by taking a nice picture that's not giving the antis any fuel for the fire.
So if this sounds good to somebody maybe from Georgia or Arkansas or somewhere, close by that might want to try hunting a late rut, something along those lines, what advice would you give to somebody that, looking to try Louisiana out?
I couldn't tell you the prices on the non-resident license, but it's pretty straightforward. You can do it all online. Go to LouisianaBowhunter.com and then go to the hunting page. And there's links there to everything you would want to know. Anything about bow hunting in Louisiana, whether you're a resident or a non-resident, can be found there on that hunting page. And we designed it as such. We want people to have no reason to go anywhere else, other than to our page. If you've got a question, the answer may not be there, but the link to the answer is there.
What's the best place to find you guys on social media and Louisiana Bowhunter? How can people get involved in that?
Yeah, so our website's LouisianaBowhunter.com, and then we've got a Facebook page. We're somewhere around 21,000 followers now. We're constantly sharing information. Wildlife and Fisheries does official news releases through us there, and we're in partners with them and a lot of other game conservation associations and whatnot. We're big advocates for QDMA and the National Wild Turkey Federation. So we're not all about deer hunting. Here soon we're going to be transitioning to 3D archery and bow fishing. And I did an article on turkey hunting with a bow last year. So it's really about making archery a year-long passion if it's not already. But we're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Not on Snapchat. I'm too old for Snapchat.
Yeah, I haven't tried that myself either.
Oh man, I tried it. I don't understand it. I don't understand it. I'm too old is all I can figure.
I'll be honest. I'm a little scared of it.
Yeah.
I did see a post about your 3D archery coming up. Why don't you give me a quick summary on how that's going to work and what you guys are doing there?
Yeah, man, that's going to be awesome. We are we totally tore down the box to put this thing together. It's going to be March 3rd at Sinlaw Bowbenders in Pollock, Louisiana. Pollock is not close to anyone. It's equally far from everyone. So we were trying to be fair by doing it there. It's in the center of the state, just north of Alexandria. This is not an ASA or an IBO style event. This is a bow hunting scenario event. We'll have moving targets. You'll be shooting from elevated platforms. You'll be shooting from ground blinds. And if you win first place, you're going to win $500 cash. Second place will get $250. Third place will get $100. We're going to have vendors there. We'll have concessions. We've got some awesome sponsors that gave us a ton of door prizes to give away. And we've got a couple novelty shoots. We've got a long range shoot. You'll be shooting at least 100 yards at a target. The closest person to the bullseye wins. And then we've got an iron buck challenge. Also, I don't know if you've ever done one of those, but those are really fun.
No, you got to tell me what that is now, because I don't even know what that is.
All right. Well, the iron buck, it's an iron silhouette of a buck with the vitals cut out. So pretty much if you hit anywhere on that deer, not in the vitals, your arrow is toast. We'll start at 20 yards. Everybody shoots. If the arrows are safe, you go get it. You made it through the next round. We back it up 10 yards until 60, and then we'll start going 5-yard increments. And then the last arrow standing wins the pot.
That's pretty cool.
So it's going to be an all-day event. It's going to be a lot of fun. Be a lot of opportunities to win a lot of money. We've got an open class, a bowhunter class, we're calling a general bowhunter class, which is going to be, kind of your novice. If you've got some youth, or just people that aren't, it's not a money class, just come have fun. You can win an award, you can win a plaque, or, I think we're going to give some stuff away with that as well. And then we've got a kid range set up, for the kids to shoot for free. And, this club's got awesome targets. They've got the Reinhardt targets. So they've got like the raptor and the caribou and it's a full-size caribou, full-size elk, full-size bear, alligator, tons of cool stuff.
That sounds like a lot of fun. Well, really appreciate you coming on, Justin. Glad we could finally get this in. And but thanks a lot for coming on down south with me.
Hey, thank you, man. I appreciate it.
All right, thanks for listening, everybody. Until next time, we're out down south.